Nicolas Sarkozy's dream of a union for the Mediterranean comes true. The French president gathers EU members with their southern neighbours under a new umbrella. But will it work, and how? This is Inside Story. Hello, I'm Lauren Taylor. He announced the idea soon after he'd been elected last year. And now the French president, Nicolas Sarkozy, has managed to gather the Mediterranean countries and the EU members under a new forum called Union for the Mediterranean. With France currently holding the rotating presidency of the EU, Sarkozy hopes this project will be the flagship achievement of that and of his own presidency. Heads of 44 countries representing more than 700 million people signed the founding act of this union in Paris. It will now take precedence over the so-called Barcelona process, a Euro-Mediterranean dialogue launched in 1995 that yielded little. Projects of the newly born body are meant to address a number of issues: fighting pollution in the Mediterranean, pushing solar energy and improving surveillance of maritime traffic are among the objectives of the Union. But there's also fighting terrorism, given the fact that a number of suspected terrorists make their way to Europe through the south of the Mediterranean. The new union aims at better anti-terrorism coordination between the member states. And there's also illegal immigration. The proximity of a number of Mediterranean countries to Europe encourages the poorest of the south to risk their lives in search of a better life. Well, Nicolas Sarkozy spoke at the opening session of the Paris summit. Here's what he had to say.
A décidé d'un commun accord à reconnaître à chacun.
We should share our responsibilities and reach a common agreement about our rights and duties. Those who would take decisions will have to share equal rights with those who would be affected by those decisions. It's a political, moral and historical choice for the Union for the Mediterranean. We should line up strong areas of mutual cooperation and build solidarities. This new approach to the relations between Europe and the Mediterranean countries would be represented by the co-presidency. It will be shared between a president from the north and another from the south of the Mediterranean.
Libya, which has been trying to renew ties with the outside world, did not attend the Paris summit. For Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi, the Mediterranean Union plan is no more than an attempt to add North Africa to what he called the new Roman Empire. He said this: "We are member states of the Arab League and also the African Union, and we will not take any chances with damaging Arab or African unity." Well, joining our discussion today are our guests. In Barcelona, Ignasi Guardans, member of the European Parliament, group of the Alliance of Liberals and Democrats for Europe. In Nice, Saad Dejabbar, Deputy Director of the Centre for North African Studies at Cambridge University. And in Berlin, Isabel Schäfer, Assistant Professor of Political Science and the Middle East at the Free University of Berlin. Thank you all for joining us. If I could start with you, Ignasi Guardans. We heard that the Libyan leader doesn't think it's a good idea. Do you think it is?
I do think it is, and I think his argument is not a good one. He should look for another argument if he wants to oppose this idea. I mean, Spain, for example, has a community with Latin American countries, is a member and a very active member of this new Union for the Mediterranean, and indeed is a very strong member of the European Union. That means that a single, just a member state, any state can have different links based on geography, and on history, on language, and it is not an argument to say that because you are African, or because you want to support the African or the Arab unity, you cannot support something that is extremely important, which is that all countries around the Mediterranean, we can work together in everything we share on an equal footing. I think it's a very good idea.
Saad Dejabbar,
in fact, it's going on with an idea which was already there.
Okay, if I could bring in Saad Dejabbar in Nice, good idea or generally a bad plan?
I think it's an empty gesture, because you have the Euromed, which has existed for many years. The European Union and the southern Mediterranean countries have invested a lot into this. The European Union have paid a lot of money, spent so much time on this, the Barcelona process. And what can the Sarkozy project do where the Barcelona failed? This is the issue. I mean, no one has been taking this project initiative seriously except Mr. Sarkozy himself. Mr. Sarkozy started this project out on the basis of his own mood, his ministry, his civil servants. No one knew how he started it and how he's going to implement it.
Okay,
let me
just stop you there
objective,
and bring in Isabella Schaefer. You were smiling there. Do you think this is just Sarkozy's plan, and how can it be different from simply the Barcelona process?
I think Sarkozy made a sort of analysis of the weaknesses of the Barcelona process, and he tries now to improve, let's say, the co-ownership of the southern Mediterranean partners, which is a good thing for the moment. We have to see afterwards if it works, but at least the initiative to reanimate the debate about the Mediterranean policy within Europe was a good thing. So, and the other thing, other idea about the initiative is to get involved the private sector, which is also a good thing for the moment. But here again, we have to see how it will really work afterwards. So I wouldn't condemn the initiative as such, but I would be very critical or modest about the expectations.
Ignacy Guardans, is that what we should expect, modest expectations for this union?
Well, I mean, you know, expectations, you never know. I would prefer to have high expectations, but the realistic ones. What is important to remind to our viewers is that this is not anymore the original Sarkozy's idea. The original Sarkozy's idea was indeed a very personal one, an idea just from his administration and from his own. But this was assumed by the European Union itself as a sort of new energy put in something which was already there, which was the Barcelona process. And as Isabel, I think, just said, it is true that the Barcelona process was never as effective as it should have been, but indeed it did it worked in certain fields, but there were some problems. So the idea of putting new energy with the whole muscle of the whole European Union is a very good one. High expectations, I don't know. It depends on everybody. It depends, of course, on the European Union, but it does depend, of course, very much on the other partners, because the whole idea of this is that we are all on an equal footing. I want to underline very much that thing. This is not Europe talking to the southern Mediterranean. This is all of us working together in our common concerns.
If I could bring Saad Djabbar back in, that change from the original, it was originally just going to be Mediterranean countries, and that was enlarged to bring in the other European countries, effectively because of Angela Merkel's persuasive tactics. She didn't want this just to be a particular club of the Med, if you like. Do you think that actually that's made it more powerful, or do you think it actually waters it down?
I honestly this project deflects from the real issue, which has been the Barcelona process. And the Barcelona process has been elevated and promoted to a project called the European neighborliness with the other southern European countries. Other European countries were against this project. The Germans didn't want it. The British were hiding behind them and they didn't want it. And by the way, there is no money, no budget for this, no structure for this. Sarkozy has done it for his own ego as a man who does everything. But there is no structure, there is no project, and I think the French or Sarkozy wanted to give or to put France again as a leading power in Europe, and he wanted to express it through this initiative. This initiative, for instance, excludes Turkey indirectly. Sarkozy never wanted Turkey to be part of the European Union, therefore he said, let's have Turkey in this process where Turkey would not have it. The Maghreb countries, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia and others were tied up in the joint or the bilateral partnerships with the Euromed, and the European Union paid a lot of money in order to gear up these countries to be more competitive and to allow their markets to open up for the European goods. And so this project is really another white elephant. This project is another white elephant. It's a big balloon by Mr. Sarkozy, and you wake up 2-3 years ago from now and that project will just be water under another bridge of those big initiatives.
Let me bring in Isabel Schaefer now on that point. Actually, we'll move to the white elephant issue in a moment. But first, to go back to Turkey, that's been a lot of the argument, hasn't it? That this is a kind of undercover way of giving Turkey something to keep it happy, while not actually in the end wanting to allow it into the EU proper. What do you make of that argument?
Yes, I think that was one of the objectives of Sarkozy, but on the other hand, the negotiations between the EU and Turkey are advanced so far that there will be no way back. It's just a question of time, and I think the Mediterranean Union cannot be a substitute for membership in the EU.
Ignacy Guardans, the Turkey question, can I bring that to you?
Yeah, I think it has nothing to do one thing of the other. I mean, it is very important that whatever France's or Sarkozy's position on Turkey, this is an EU instrument. I mean, this is not anymore, this Union for the Mediterranean was indeed at its start a French idea. But after Angela Merkel jumped in and the Spanish Prime Minister jumped in and the Italian Prime Minister jumped in, they turned it into what it is today, which is a European Union project. And that means that the European Union has an answer for the Turkey issue, whatever the French say. I mean, the French. The day of the ratification, the French will have a say, indeed. But in terms of what is the position of the European Union towards Turkey's membership, that has nothing to do with what we are starting.
And what
we are starting will survive.
Yeah, can I just put it to you that Sadr Bar's point that it doesn't really have any infrastructure or really money properly. What's your answer to those points?
Well, those are good points to put on the table. As for the structure, you don't need the structure if you have political will, because this is not about paying a huge amount of civil servants, organizing civil servants in a nice building somewhere in Riyadh or in Marseille or in Barcelona. I mean, the secretariat, whatever the secretariat will be, it's got to be a very narrow thing, putting together the energies which are in place, putting together the police to work on terrorism, putting together our experts to work on pollution and environment, putting together our immigration. It's a political instrument. It is not a sort of new body, a new institution. Nobody wants that, and that would be useless. Indeed, regarding the money, well, that's another issue. We do have the European Neighbourhood Partnership Instrument, the new European Neighbourhood Instrument, that has a lot of money, and we need to debate within the European Union what part of the money is going to be allocated this.
Okay.
But I underline, the money doesn't need to come only from Europe. It's going to be also money from the southern countries.
Okay. Do all stay where you are. We're taking a very quick break now, but when we come back, we'll be asking, is Sarkozy the right man to spearhead this ambitious union for the Mediterranean? Do stay with Inside Story.